Joining me now in the group chat, Evan McMurray-Santoro, reporter at Notice, Kevin Frey, Washington correspondent for Spectrum News, New York One, and Sabrina Rodriguez, national political reporter for the Washington Post. All right, Sabrina, I want to start with you because I feel like I have to translate my entire introduction to English, which is they pressured these dudes over the weekend to take a stand on this bill. So what happened, so to speak?
Right now, it's Trump wants to get this done before Memorial Day weekend. Republicans, Speaker Johnson and Republicans that are supportive of the bill want to get this done. They want to show that there's progress. We're past Trump's first 100 days. They would have liked to get this done ASAP when Trump came into office. So this is sort of one of those steps on the road to getting it done.
Because Trump has done so much with executive orders, right?
Absolutely.
So this is the part where you're actually forcing some things into law, but also financing the rest of all the ideas.
100%. I mean, one key piece here, there's several to this bill. I mean, that's sort of why it's the air quotes big, beautiful bill, is because they're trying to get all the things, all the wish lists that Trump has in his agenda. They want to get it in one bill because they know that they really have, in terms of getting the votes together. We see how difficult this is already turning out to be. So they feel like they have one shot this year to get this done. So there's, the money for deportation proceedings to ramp up, immigration enforcement. There is huge changes to energy policy that they're trying to make through this. And a big one that Trump wants is, at the end of the year, a lot of the tax breaks that passed in his 2017 law will expire. So they need to find ways to extend that and to be able to finance that. And that's where you get into some of the tensions on the Hill over how do you pay for it and what does spending look like.
Okay, gentlemen, you jump in here on tensions. Who's fighting it and why?
So you have basically kind of two factions within the Republican caucus, which I know is not necessarily surprising for those who've been covering Washington for a while, but you have the more moderates who come from these districts that, quite frankly, are the majority makers, and they will make sure to tell you that they're the majority makers.
And you cover New York, so I'm often asking you about these moderate New Yorkers.
New York moderates, also some from Jersey, also some from California, where, for example, the state and local tax deduction is a really big issue for them. Salt, you'll keep hearing the word salt. At the same time, you have this more conservative faction that wants deeper cuts. So you have one side that wants to protect Medicaid to some extent. They want to boost this tax deduction, which costs more money. So there's more money that they want to spend. And then you have another faction that wants to reduce spending, that wants to make deeper cuts to Medicaid. And so now these two are on a collision course, and we'll see if there's resolution this week. Last night was really just a big procedural step.
I want to play one clip of tape. The ranking member, Brendan Boyle, he's a Democrat on the committee that was involved in this. And he was saying that, I think just because, what does he say? I just mean on the bill that's in front of us, making sure all the members know transparently just what the heck is in this thing. Because obviously it's changing back in the back room by the minute.
Well, this is the normal sort of DC thing, right? These massive bills that get pushed through and people don't read them before they vote on them. This whole process is kind of both the easiest and hardest thing Republicans could do and kind of all they had to do. Before this whole thing started, I talked to a bunch of conservative activists right after Trump was elected, right? What do they want to do legislatively? And a lot of them told me, look, we have to do this one bill. We only have this, we have a very short period of time, cram everything in there because we have this divided caucus, very narrow margins. So the thing is, if we can push this forward by having enough stuff that these people want, we can get this done, as opposed to if we break it up, we'll have a lot of inner scene fights about other stuff that we don't want to do. So this is sort of their plan, but of course what goes with that plan is how impossible it can be, because any sort of thing that changes or shifts could turn someone off, turn somebody else. Yeah. So really what it comes down to in the end, right, will be Trump coming in and saying, I really want you to do this the way it is. We've seen repeatedly Republicans kind of backing away from some of their own principles to sort of be like, well, we're with MAGA now. We're going to do what Trump says. It's unclear at this point how powerful that will be in this case. But I do think that Trump being back from his foreign trip and here now is sort of what Mike Johnson and the rest of these leadership really want, because they're going to see him say, look, all this fighting amongst you guys is over now. I'm back. We're passing my big bill. We're signing it.
And already it feels like a test of the speaker's leadership, how he's been able to hold things together so far. We're going to talk about this more this week because apparently it goes through another committee and some of the holdouts are on that committee. So we're going to be hearing more from them. I feel like every week I'm showing downward arrows potentially, but credit rating is significant. I don't know if it's politically significant the way it used to be. I remember us coming up as reporters. It was very like, oh my gosh, what's going on with the credit rating? And it feels like their stature is diminished. How are you guys sort of thinking about this moment for our economy?
I mean, I think I will say on the political front, as we are watching over the next week, not to go back to the topic we were talking about before, but
it's about money and spending.
But part of what they're citing is one, the big beautiful bill and the trillions it's expected to add to the national debt, and then you add
to
on.
Underscore that, it's expected to add.
Right.
So you're saying the credit rating agency is looking at that bill and not seeing less spending.
And the credit agency took into account both Democratic and Republican administrations across the board, but they're dealing with the here and the now with this bill. And then on top of that, you have these conservatives, these hard-right conservatives in the House that have been saying we need to cut spending, cut spending, cut spending. This will give them more fodder as they make this argument over the next couple days as negotiations play out.
Yeah.
You know, I'll tell you, the most interesting thing to me since January that we've learned is that the only people with shorter memories than political people are finance people, right? Like we have seen the market go all over the place, right, and then kind of stabilize. We still have a president who is very sort of uncertainty building when it comes to everything having to do with the economy.
Yeah.
And political people are the same, right? They look back and like, oh well, that was the last administration. Prices, supposedly destroyed Biden's presidency. We're looking at prices still going up now. All the kind of core things to make a really tough economy still exist there. But we're seeing now sort of the economic pressure kind of back off a bit from the president. We've seen the markets, you have those numbers down, but they kind of have shifted back, right? We've even seen the president's poll numbers shift up a little bit. It's a very interesting moment in terms of the politics of all this. How the economy actually is going to shake out, I don't know. If I did know, I'd have a much better, balanced budget or whatever. But I will say that what you're looking at, and I've spoken to a lot of folks who do this stuff for a living, deal with economic stuff, obviously with politics stuff, and you don't hear them talking right now the same way they were like tariff week or the week after those tariff week came out. And that to me is a really fascinating change.
Speaking of tariffs, there might be more to come because now there's this conversation about pharma tariffs, right, on drug companies. Help me understand why in this moment or what's significant about approaching that industry in particular.
Yeah. As a former trade reporter, the second I hear Trump and tariffs, I'm like transported back to the first term.
Thoughts and prayers.
And the reality is Trump has always wanted to pursue tariffs. So it is interesting that, there's the vibes have shifted to, okay, actually there's, more,
we're all more used to it now.
Right.
We're hearing
now
such
we're more
insane
used to
numbers.
it. But the reality is he still wants to pursue more tariffs. He backed off on that, Liberation Day at the beginning of April that he had talked about, the sweeping tariffs. He backed off, but it's supposed to be a 90-day pause, and it's supposed to be all these negotiations with different countries.
But isn't the average person more price sensitive to something like their drugs?
Absolutely. When it comes to the pharmaceutical tariffs and the discussion around it, Trump has talked for a long time about wanting to bring drug production back to the United States. He talks about it as sort of a national security issue. If the United States were to go to war with China and China makes the majority of pharmaceuticals, what that could do to the United States. Most people, you go out and you talk to voters, and I've talked to folks that agree with the concept of tariffs of, oh yes, let's bring production back to the United States. But those aren't things that happen overnight. So if you shoot up tariffs, you continue to fight with the countries that are producing these drugs, you risk shortages. And that's where we see pharmacists today stockpiling in the event and the fear of that happening.
I want to talk about this because Biden has tried to get ahead of this conversation. He's dealing with his legacy in real time. But when I heard that audio, I actually thought back to when Biden came out at the time and he gave a press conference kind of disputing this description. I want to play that for people before we continue.
How in the hell dare he raise that? Frankly, when I was asked the question, I thought to myself, it wasn't any of their damn business. I don't need anyone. I don't need anyone to remind me when he passed away or passed away. I'm well-meaning and I'm an elderly man and I know what the hell I'm doing.
So when we talk about the people around him kind of protecting me, he came out right at the time to be like, no, this is wrong, this depiction of me.
Well, and he also didn't mispronounce like a world leader in that press conference
same press
as well.
conference, yeah.
I mean, this really is a story about the people who were around Joe Biden, right? He was old when he was elected. He was old when he ran for president, and he was old when he decided to run again. A lot of these questions are sort of like, okay, a president wants to stay president, right? We're not surprised at that. But we are seeing a conversation now among people. This book, we've seen this book coming out by Alex Thompson and Jay Tapper, and you're seeing so many people who said publicly, he's fine, now saying, actually, we feel terrible about what we did and what we said. This is a very important conversation for Democrats to have. A painful conversation, probably, made more painful now with the news about Joe Biden and his personal life. But the actual conversation itself about whether or not this party wants to keep doing this sort of notorious RBG thing, where they just stick by these people who are really maybe fading and not where they were when they first started, risking the party's actual legacy. That conversation needs to be, they need to have that conversation to figure out what they want to do.
It's not going away.
I also think something that we can't lose sight of here is the fact that, when we talk about, the Democrats missed this or that Democrats were saying this, voters weren't. And that is something that I think Democrats have to grapple with. Poll after poll at the time showed that people were concerned that Biden was too old to run for president. People were concerned saying that they didn't want him to run for re-election. And Democrats were offering full-throated support before that June 27th. So it's interesting that June 27th is sort of this inflection point for the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
But for Americans being out on the campaign trail last year, I remember people repeatedly saying it's really going to be the two of them running in a rematch.
I remember that. And also to your point about the people around him, it seems to be there is also this question of when people were reporting on it, how hard the White House would push back. And in light of what we know now, questioning that pushback.
Right, and I mean, one of the other dynamics to keep an eye on here is the leaders on Capitol Hill and kind of what role they played in either insulating him or trying to prop him up and back him up, particularly when it comes to Senator Chuck Schumer. He's come under, obviously, his own scrutiny over the last couple of months over his handling of just of things on Capitol Hill and how much to push back on Trump. But at the time he was saying, even just weeks before that debate, that Biden was, quote, in command. Now, the new talking point from Senator Schumer and Congressman Jeffries is essentially, we're looking forward. Whether or not this will still resonate in 2028 is another question.
Is not addressing the
Correct,
thing.
not at all.
Yeah.
Whether it'll still resonate in 2028 is a different conversation
If
altogether.
it changes the way the party actually operates when it comes to their leaders, so it's standing by a person versus a principle. That's the looking forward they have to figure out.
Person versus a principle. I think that is a very, see, you're into that too. I mean, I think that's an interesting thing that we're going to be talking about. The book is actually not officially out yet, just, causing all this conversation. So I feel like we're going to be talking about this
Urban drips.
I think we've heard about it. But I like the fact that, as you're saying, people are now having to have a real honest conversation about what it means to them and what does it mean to be in power. So it'll be interesting to see how Biden talks about this in the coming days and weeks. You guys, thank you so much for waking up with me. We talked about a lot of things today.